The Anatomy of Fear, A Mortal Mind Unabridged by Valerie Lynn Stevens. Written at age 23. Preface. I began wanting this work to be a non-fiction book in the conventional autobiographical sense, but I suppose that it already knew what it was going to be. Whenever I would mention to people that I was writing a book and they asked what it was about, I was always at a loss for words, for I truly did not know how to categorize it into any one genre. I suppose it is an amalgamation of various philosophical musings and meditations, spoken in the voice of prose poetry. It contains some of my previously penned individual works and some of my newer work. However, the bulk of these cathartic ponderances and rantings were composed when I was still in my early 20s. The Anatomy of Fear, A Mortal Mind Unabridged, is a tribute to those abysmal depths of the mortal human mind, to the more intense inner workings of the mortal human heart. It grants expression to those thoughts, feelings, and conditions which we do not grant just or essential recognition, dwelling in a world increasingly immersed in a crude, even savage kind of rationalistic parasitism, reductionism, and blunted, myopic surface interpretation. This piece is a continuation of one of my favorite combinatorial themes, the philosophical and the psychological, in relation to our human experience and condition. Yet most of all, it is a keenly piercing probe into a mortal human inhabitancy so vulnerable, variegating, and complex, and the tragedy of how it is too often oversimplified by a world which loathes deeper truth and humanity with oftentimes forthright contempt. And although most of the insights contained herein do spring from a very abysmal and dark well, this aspect of perceiving is just as relevant and essential to humankind as are the more often touted redeeming graces of positivism and rationalism. For the very essence of nature, and this includes that of human nature, is not only dual in scope, but is polyparadoxical as well. Furthermore, it is the contradictions within each individual that make us by far the most complex, beautiful, and potentiated of all the species, and I believe that this would still be so even if all species of earth life forms were combined into one multi-behavioral creature. The human mind, or a more apt term would be psyche, as it also denotes the soulful aspect of humankind, is what sets us apart from other creations and forces of nature, organic and inorganic. And this superior faculty that we have can, as with all things, according to the dictates and free will of every individual employing them, work for us or against us as we struggle to unify the mind, body, soul, and spirit. In closing, through my own personal face-to-face with deep depression and often disabling anxiety, I fully understand that most illness or disorder begins within the mind, and eventually, in its worst phase, cannot completely preserve our tender souls from the ravages of the disease, that true root of all evils known as self-hatred. My honesty may indeed be found by some to be brutal or otherwise hard to swallow, but it is vital for each and every one of us, no matter our personalities, to surrender ourselves daily before the shrine of crucial self-examination, if we are to continue to potentiate in ways constructive rather than destructive to ourselves and those around us. We can handle the truth better than we think we can. It is my sincerest and deepest abiding hope that you gain something for your own benefit out of these writings, as the reading and digesting of this piece can be used as a method towards transpersonal enlightenment through and by the form, perhaps intangible, nevertheless purifying soul baptism of truth uncensored. But mainly, the writings contained herein are my intimations of what it feels like to live in hell here on earth, as I'm sure we all, when honest with ourselves and others, can identify with. Yet most important to mention is that although the voice of this work may often use first-person singular pronouns, it is meant to denote a definite third-person plural inclusivity and universality. For we have all struggled with such darkness of mind and soul, at least at one point in our mortal lives. To exit this preface with one last thought. In the absence of light, the shadow is nowhere to be seen, but this is merely because it has just morphed into all-encompassing darkness. For light, in its concomitant vapidity of lightness, can propagate itself in isolation. But if wise, it chooses truth. It chooses integration of the shadow as well, and thus does it choose its own true redemption and salvation.